Hi everyone, Jonathan here. So one question I often get asked is my relationship something that can be saved? Is it too late to save your relationship? Well, I'm here to tell you 100% that you can save your relationship. And not only is it not too late, there's never been a better time to get started on doing that. The reason why I say it's not too late is because if there's two things happening in your life that are present in your life, then it's absolutely 100% possible that you can save your relationship. What are those two things? Are you still breathing? Are you still drawing breath? If that's the case, then I'm going to say it's never too late to do anything in the world. The second is, can you see? Do your eyes work? Now, if your eyes work, then 100% you can save your relationship. Now, the reason why I say this, that if you're still breathing and if your eyes are still working, that you can save your relationship, is because it brings me back to a story of a couple that I worked with. Now, this is a really young couple that I'd worked with. They're about in their early 30s, wonderful couple. The problem was the husband drank a lot. He actually had a really bad drinking problem that he talked about, and he said was a really big issue in his life, but he wasn't ready to give up drinking. Now, for a relationship and a married couple, that's not something that a wife or another partner really wants to hear, that your partner who's got a drinking issue doesn't want to give up drinking. Now, so what do we do? How can we work with that? Well, this particular couple, they'd been married for 6 months, but they'd been dating for over 3 years. Now, where it gets interesting is that the husband, he would often come home from work every Friday, every other Friday, he would get his paycheck, come home from work, he would give his money to his new wife for the rent, for his share of the bills, and for the groceries, and what money he had left, he would go out and spend on alcohol. The problem is that he would binge drink for the next 3 days until all of his money ran out, and he would just buy the biggest bottles of vodka that he could possibly buy. Now, his wife obviously had a real difficult time with that. I was rather intrigued that after 3 years of him doing this, it wasn't an issue, but then all of a sudden, since they've been married, it became an issue, and I think I'll save that for a different video, but that has a lot to do with the circumstances of the big life cycle event, which I talk about in some of my blog posts about what happens to us when we go through these life cycle events. But that being said, all of a sudden, after 6 months being married, his wife had a real difficult time with his level of drinking. So, the very first session they came to, the wife said, "I don't think I can stay in this marriage anymore. He's not willing to give up drinking. I'm at my wit's end. I'm ready to walk out the door." Well, actually, it was her house, so she was ready to kick him out the door. Now, obviously, that's not what he wanted. She didn't want that either. She brought to the marriage 3 children, 3 lovely children that he'd spend a lot of time with and grown to really love and almost adopt as his own kids. So, after the first session, we met a second time, and at that second session, I asked, what's been better this week? And he said, well, instead of drinking on Friday when I got my paycheck, I waited a day and I started drinking on Saturday. And I said, well, gee, that's really interesting. What made you wait a day? And he said, well, I was thinking about our last session. I really wanted to make an effort towards my wife. And so I decided to delay my drinking as much as I could. And then finally I broke down, and he said he bought alcohol on the Saturday and he binge drank for 2 more days. And then his money was up, and then he went back to normal. So I saw that as a really good sign. That's like a big win in my world. His wife, on the other hand, thought, you know what, I don't really care that he slowed down a little bit. He waited a day. He's still drinking. That's still a big problem. So right here, there's a little bit of perspective differences between me and his wife and him. All of us have a different perspective, a different take on what his drinking was doing to the relationship. But that doesn't mean that we can't all align our perspectives, and that's really what we're trying to do. And that's why I say if your eyes are working, then it is absolutely 100% not too late to save your relationship. So we met the following week, and the following week I asked, what's been different? And he said, well, I couldn't buy as much alcohol as I typically buy. And I said, well, what do you mean you didn't buy as much alcohol as you typically buy? He said, well, on Friday, I got paid, and I decided rather than go out and spend money on alcohol, he said, I went home, gave my wife half the money for the rent, half the money for the groceries, half the money for the utility bills, and then I decided to take her kids out, and we went to a movie, and after the movie, we went out for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I thought, that's really great. What a great way to spend your money. So why did you drink less? He said, well, I spent over $100 on my wife's kids, on our kids actually were the words he used. He said, spent over $100 on our kids, and I didn't have enough money for as much alcohol as I wanted, and I could only buy really small 12-ounce bottles as opposed to 26-ounce bottles that he would typically buy. And I really was scratching my head at this point because I was thinking, wow, that's a really big win. Here he is taking his money and what he would prefer to spend it on, which is the alcohol. His new preference was to spend it on her kids, on their kids, if I want to use the proper language that he used. Now, why is that a huge win? Well, again, here we've got a little slight shift in perspective, and it really shows how much effort he was making. But more importantly, we can see just what type of impact the family was having on the drinking, and not just the drinking was having on the family. Because if the family wasn't important to him, he would have not taken those kids out for dinner and a movie, and he would have bought alcohol. Admittedly, his wife was still a little cool to the idea. She wasn't really warming up. It took a little while. But then I didn't see them for about a month because they went on holiday, and she said, and when they came back after their holiday, they'd been to somewhere down in the States. We were living in Canada at the time. And they came back and they said, this is going to be our last session together. And I said, whoa, I was scratching my head, what's been different? And she said, well, for the very first time, when we were on our holiday and I saw how much he was taking care of the kids, and particularly our youngest, the youngest was 2 years old. She said, particularly watching over him, putting him on his shoulders, walking around the theme park, really enjoying themselves, him taking care of the kids, feeding them, really just being a great father. She said, for the very first time I looked at him and I didn't see an alcoholic, but what I saw was a dad. And that, the minute she said that, I had to hold back the tears. I don't even know if I successfully did that. But what was really touching about that is it illustrates just how important our vision is in what we choose to see when we look at someone. So for the very first time, she decided that what she was looking at was not an alcoholic, but what she was really seeing was a dad to her children, a man who loved her kids and put her kids first over his own needs. Even though his needs weren't the greatest in the world to go out and spend your money on alcohol, that's not the point. The point is that he put her kids first, and for the first time, she could see that. So what we need to do when we look at our relationship, the very first thing you want to say and look for is not just, wow, this is all just broken and there's so much that needs to be fixed and nothing is going to get better. Rather than looking at your relationship from that perspective, just look at the one or two things that are going well. And that's why I say it's not too late to save your relationship. Because if the very fact is that you're still in the home together, or that you're still together and you haven't gone the distance of going to a divorce attorney, or you haven't packed it in and thrown your key at the person and said, I'm leaving, the very fact that you're together tells me that there is room to start looking at different aspects of your relationship. So the easiest way to do that is to just make an itemized list today of the 5 things that are working well in your relationship, because those are going to be perhaps for a lot of us, the very first time that we're really bringing into picture what we like about our relationship. Because I know it's so easy to talk about what we don't like, just as that wife was talking about how much she really didn't like her husband's drinking and all she saw was an alcoholic. For the very first time, we've got this opportunity to say, hey, we can do something different and we can just look at the good in our relationship. And that's why I say it's never too late to save your relationship. So do yourself a favor, take a piece of paper, grab a pen, write down the 5 things that are going well in your relationship, no matter how distressed it is, because we all have relationship problems. We all have situations of distress with our partner. That being said, put those aside, put those on the coffee table. I promise you can pick them up later. Pick up the 5 things that are working in your relationship. And that's why it's not too late to save your relationship. If you can still draw breath and if you can still see with your eyes, it's never too late to save your relationship. Thanks for watching the video, and I look forward to talking again. Take care. Bye.